Hi everyone, my name's Megan. I'm an artist here at Say With Clay, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make a hand-built mug. And you'll be able to drink out of it too, which will be really nice. So what we are going to do first is I want to show you guys everything that is in your kit and what you're going to use it for, right? And then I'll also talk about some things you might need that aren't in your kit that you could find around your house. So the first thing is you get 2 pounds of clay. And we're gonna use all of this to make our mug, so we'll make a really nice big mug. Second thing is some dental floss. We're gonna be using this as a wire tool. We also have a piece of a comb, which we're going to use to scratch and attach if you've ever used clay before. If not, I'll explain how to do that when we get to that point. You have a sponge in case you need to smooth anything. You have a wooden pin tool for a variety of things. Another flossy kind of tool to use for a couple different things. We have some paintbrushes for potentially our slip or for our glazes. And we have several different glaze options for you within your kit. Okay, so I'll talk more about all of these in a minute when we get to those points, right? Some of the extra things that you might need for today is some sort of small container for water if you need it to wash out your brushes while glazing. You might need a separate thing of water to make your slip. You will also need something to put your glazes on if you're mixing any colors, so like a meat tray or a paper plate. And you might need some newspaper today to help give our mug a little bit of stability while we're working on it. The last thing specific to our mug is to find something to help us make our shape. You could use a wooden spoon. You could use the end of like a rolling pin. You could use the end of any other sort of like kitchen utensil, but you want it to be longer and to be rounded or semi-rounded. Because we're gonna use this to get our shape of our mug. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So let's push our tools to the side, because the first thing we're going to be doing is we need to wedge our clay. Wedging is kind of like kneading bread. So if you guys have been doing any bread recipes at home during this time, you might be a little bit familiar with this. So we're going to first start off by wedging. And I like to stand up when I wedge, so I'm gonna stand up so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm gonna do it from the side so that you can see. So the way that we wedge is we push down our clay, we push it and pull it towards us. And what this is doing, so pushing out, pulling it towards us, I can turn it, push it out, pull it towards us. See how this is getting a spirally shape as I do that? The reason why we're doing this is so that there will be no more air bubbles in our clay. And if you've done clay before, you might have heard that having air bubbles in there when we go to fire it in the kiln, which is kind of like a giant oven, that heats up our clay, makes it more durable and finishes it. If there are air bubbles in our clay, it can blow up, which isn't good. So this will eliminate that problem. And we want to wedge about 20 times, essentially squishing out and popping any air bubbles that are in here and squishing all of the clay together. See how much of a spiral that is? Okay, as the clay gets compressed together. All right, now when you are finished, you are going to use your dental floss to cut into this and check that there are no more air bubbles. So I'm going to pull this through, just like that, very satisfying, and check. Do I see any pockets in here? I don't. That means that it's wedged, it's good, it has no air bubbles. So we want to combine these. So we can squish it together. We need to wedge it a little bit more to get it back to the point that we need to be. You don't need to wedge it as much this time. If at any point you mess up and you have to squish your clay back into a ball to restart, you just need to re-wedge it to make sure there's no air bubbles in there. All right. So now I think we're ready to start making our mug. So first thing we need to do is we need to take some clay off of here to save it for our handle. Okay, so I'm gonna take off, I could use my lovely dental floss again because it's really fun, this part. And take off, yeah, not that much for our handle. I'm just gonna put this to the side so that we can use it later. Okay, so now I have my hunk of clay, and this is sort of like making a pinch pot, but it's gonna be a little bit different because we're gonna be using that kitchen spoon or whatever other object you found to help us to make it wider rather than using just our hands. So we're gonna make this into a cylinder, all right? So we can roll it between our hands, or roll it on the table a little bit to start making it go outward. We can also squish it and turn it in our hands, okay? And we wanna make it a little bit shorter than how high we want our mug to be, okay? So, or around the same size. All right, once you have it to a decent cylinder, you're just going to hit the bottom and the top to get it to be nice and flat. Okay, so now I have our cylinder. So now we are going to, instead of trying to stick our finger into here like we would with a normal pinch pot, we're going to be using our tool to press into our clay. You want to make sure that you are not going through the bottom of your piece. So just going down a little bit at a time, and you're going to start to turn it around to widen it until you can get to the point where you can put your hand into the mug to make it wider. So now I'm going to start to go out more. Okay, I'm supporting it on the outside with my hand just to make sure that it's not like completely destroying the wall. I'm going to make sure I'm doing that at the bottom as well. Okay. And I'm adding more force towards the bottom if I can. Starting to push that out into the walls more. I can probably get my hands or my fingers into the top part at this point. But I still have a ton of clay down here that I need to get to. So I'm gonna continue using my tool, press it a little bit more, and again, push it out to the sides of my container. I recommend you guys keep it flat on the table the entire time. All right, that's pretty close to the bottom. So we're probably pretty good at this point as far as going into the bottom of our clay. Now we just need to widen it, okay? So I'm gonna start using my fingers to push and pull my clay outward and upward, right? So you guys might have smaller hands than me, so you might be able to get in here a little bit more. But I'm using my thumb to press my clay outward, up into my wall, okay? Starting at the bottom, bringing it up to the rest of my wall, turning my pot as I go, because I don't want to focus just in one spot. You do want to try to keep this as consistent as possible, the walls, because if you get them too thin in one spot, it can collapse. So that's when I said earlier, if you mess up and you're not happy with the way that your shape is forming, you can just squish it back into a ball, re-wedge it, and restart. This clay is pretty forgiving, and it gives us the opportunity to, try once. If you don't like it, restart, and do as many times as we need to. If you do restart and you notice your clay is getting a little bit dry, it's starting to crack, you might need to add a little bit of water to get it to be nice and soft and usable again. Probably don't want it much thicker than, I would say the max thickness that you want is a 1/2 inch. Thicker than that, it's going to hold too much moisture in the walls, and moisture can also cause your piece to blow up in the kiln, or just take a lot longer to dry. The top of mine is starting to crack a little bit, so I'm gonna start just rubbing the cracks away with my finger, okay? Or you could use the sponge if you're almost done. Just pushing any extra clay that's at the bottom out into my walls. Some of this is a little difficult for me because my nails are kind of long right now, so they're kind of poking into my clay, but that's something that I could smooth out later with my sponge if I wanted to. So now I'm pretty happy with my shape. It's not as wide as my example one, but I kind of like that it's taller. It's completely up to you. It's your own mug, okay? So, now I'm ready to think about my handle. So I have my extra lump of clay. I'm going to roll this out into a coil or a snake, but we want it to be not too skinny. If it's too thin, it's gonna be more likely to break and not be a nice strong handle. So the way that I'm doing this is I am starting in the center with my fingers. I'm not using the palm of my hand, because palm of my hand, I'm too tempted to just like squish it flat. And I'm not applying a ton of pressure, and I'm moving my fingers out as I go. So I start here, I start to spread out my fingers and spread out that pressure as I go. I'm also turning this a little bit as I do it, so that I'm applying pressure as evenly as possible. Otherwise, sometimes you get a very flat coil, but that could actually kind of work for this. So if you get a flat coil, that's totally fine. It'll work for this handle. Okay, so I think around that 1/2 inch thickness is probably ideal for our handle. And you can see this is way longer than my handle needs to be, but that way I can choose where I want it to start and stop. I'm gonna use, again, my dental floss, because that's fun. And I'm going to use it to cut off just this end of my coil. All right, so if I imagine this is where I want my coil to start, how big does my handle need to be? And actually, I'll probably put my newspaper in here at this point because I'm happy with this shape. So that way it doesn't get smushed at all. So if I have this start here, probably want my handle to be about that long. So I would mark where I want it to be, and then I can cut it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just like to use this because it's fun. Okay, and then I have extra in case I decide that I want a different size handle. So I hold this on here. I think that's a decent size. So now if you've ever done clay before, you know that every time you attach one piece of clay to the other, you need to do something called scratch and patch or score and slip. So I'm gonna take one little container of water, and I'm gonna take a little piece of clay. All right, so now we're going to make our slip. All right, so slip is kind of like our glue that is going to attach our two pieces together. So I'm gonna take some of my extra clay and put it into my water, and I don't need a lot of water at all for this. And all I'm gonna do is use my finger to just smush my clay around in my little bowl and mix it with my water a little bit. It's gonna make it slimy, which is what we want. Okay, so now I have some slip, and then I have my piece of comb that I'm using to scratch. And then I have one more tip for you with our handle before you go to attach it, is I want you to take your handle, I want you to curve it like a frown, and tap it a couple times on your table, just lightly. That's going to flatten out the ends for you, so it's gonna make it easier to attach these to our mug, all right? So now we are going to scratch or score where we want our handle to start with our comb. And I'm gonna go in a couple different directions, okay? I wanna figure out where the bottom of my handle is gonna be. Right here, same thing. A couple different directions. And now I have to do that on my handle as well. You need to do it to both pieces of clay that you're attaching together. If I took my handle and I just kind of squished it on here and I didn't scratch and attach or use slip, it's gonna pop off into the kiln. And that's not good, because then you will have a handleless mug. So I'm going to use some of my slip, and you could use a brush for this, or I don't care if I'm getting messy, so I'm just gonna use my finger. Get some of my wet clay, put it lightly onto where I scored, where I scratched. Same thing on the bottom, and same thing on both sides of my handle. The watery slip kind of goes into all of those score marks. And when we attach them together, it kind of works as Velcro. Okay. So squishing that, attach on both the bottom and the top. Now if you just leave it like that, it's also probably not going to stay. So what we have to do is we actually have to blend these together. I think the easiest way for us to do that with this is just your finger. But you could also use a tool if you wanted to use this to blend that line in between, you could. I'm just gonna squish some of my handle into my mug. Just getting rid of that line and really connecting them together. Now they're pretty attached, but it doesn't look too pretty. So I'm gonna use my sponge, or I could use my finger really. Get a teensy tiny bit of water, or just see if it smears without water. And just run my finger or my sponge over top of those edges. And it's gonna smooth everything out. You don't wanna add too much water when you're smoothing things, because the clay already has a lot of water in it that makes it, moldable for us to use. And at a certain point, it can't absorb any more water. So if you add a ton of water, it's gonna sit on the surface and make it really slimy and gross. And then it's gonna take forever to dry. So we don't want that. So use minimal water. I think some of the best tools are just your fingers, because you have a lot more control over that. So I'm just running this over the top edge of my mug to get it really nice and smooth. See how smooth that is? And I can do that over the sides too if I want. Run my finger over top or pull my finger down. See how smooth right there is compared to right next to it. Or like I said, you could use your sponge. Might use a little water if it's cracking a lot on some of the edges. now I'm pretty happy with how smooth my mug is. Now, if I want, I can add some details. So you notice on our sample mug, all of these details are carved into this. So I can show you how to do that, and I'll also show you how to add something if you wanted to. If I wanted something to be three-dimensional, I can take a piece of any extra clay I have. I can flatten it out. Maybe I could roll it with the end of my spoon or whatever it is I used for my cylinder. I can use my pin tool to carve something, say a heart. Carve it out of my flat piece of clay. Got my little heart, and I'm going to do the exact same thing as we did with our handle to scratch. Both pieces, and then you slip to attach. And then blend it. And then smooth it. Alright, so now if you want to do any of that carving, you can. You could use probably like this guy, or you could use this, or you could actually use the opposite end of your paintbrush, or you could use a pencil too. So if I wanted to maybe do like a swirl, I'm lightly pressing into the wall of my mug. I don't want to press in too hard. If I press in too hard, I'm going to poke through. Okay. I just pressed in lightly and carved my swirl. If I have any of these extra little bits of clay, I could let it dry a little bit and brush them off later. Or you can run over it with your sponge or your finger. That can smooth things out for you, right? So I could try my different tools to see different effects, what I like. I can press things in lightly, again, so you don't press through the wall, to get different textures, so they can feel really cool when you're all done. Maybe I could even use this. Okay. Try that on the edge of your mug as well. I would probably leave your handle pretty plain because you don't really want to mess with it because you can be kind of delicate at this stage. So now that I'm done constructing my mug, I am ready to glaze. And actually, before we do this, so we don't have to pick it up once it's dry or when it's drying, I would flip your mug over and I would carve your initials very lightly, again, so you don't poke through the bottom with the pin tool. So that once this is all finished and at the studio, we'll be able to make sure that you get your mug back and you don't get it mixed up with somebody else. All right. So now we're ready for glazes. So you are going to get little containers of glaze. You're gonna get black, white, and 3 different colors. Okay. So the thing about glazes is it's pretty much like painting, except these are made of something different, something that can withstand the hot temperatures that we're going to put it through in the kiln. And they're actually going to become a little bit darker or a little bit brighter once we fire them in the kiln. We'll also be adding a clear glaze on after to make them shiny and make it all sealed, okay? So I can choose whatever glazes I want. And I have my brushes. This is why I would say to have an extra little container of water so that you can clean them off if you need to. When you're glazing, I had mentioned earlier that can stain your clothes, so I would be careful to wear a smock or something, or a big t-shirt. And you could also protect your table if you want with a piece of newspaper. Okay. So you're gonna get your tray or your paper plate if you wanna mix things. You could do a base coat first. So like if you wanted to make your whole mug blue and then make just your heart a different color or just the certain carvings different colors, I would do your base coat first. So what did I say? Blue. Open your little container, pour a little bit on here. Maybe I want to make it a light blue. So I could a little blue. And you can always add more later, so I would take less first. Add a little white. And I can mix the two together to make a new shade of blue. Remember, it's not going to be this exact shade. It's going to be darker or brighter once it goes through the firing process. All right? So I can take that and I can start painting my mug. It's going to be a very thin coat when you first get started. You're probably going to see a lot of gray clay or red clay, depending on the type of clay you have, through your glaze. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna paint the whole thing with one coat, let it dry completely, so it's gonna look kind of dusty when it dries and turn lighter. And then you're going to apply another coat. You can apply 2 to 3 coats and that'll make it a lot more solid. If you leave it like this, it'll be very streaky. That's just what you're going for. So that's how you would apply your main coat. If you wanted to use anything else to add details, you could take it right out of your container, or again, if you're mixing things, use a different brush or wash your brush off. You could paint anything 3-dimensional. Again, you're gonna do more coats later. I can also paint the edges on something 3-dimensional. Anything that you leave blank is just going to be either white if it's white clay or red if it's red clay, and shiny. You can take this and I can paint into these two. Alright. And then you're good to go once you finish glazing. So I hope you guys had a good time creating with me, and that you're excited about your mugs, because you'll be able to drink out of them when they're all done.